So I want to start with some big thank yous. Thank you to Scott for his great sermon. Thank you to all the postcarders who are writing, have written, and will write postcards, because it's really important. And thank you all for coming. The purpose of this seminar is to discuss how good California climate legislation can help us in the process of creating it and what we can do this month to help pass legislation progress this year. And I would also like to develop a team of people who are willing to sign petitions and email the appropriate California legislators when necessary to pass a bill or get it out of committee. So Scott pointed out that our situation is dire and deteriorating. Nonetheless, we can limit the damage. In the absence of reliable federal leadership, the states and localities and we the people can step in. The rate of decline can be slowed. And as things get worse, we can build more support for action. California has made an official commitment to be a climate leader, and we are. We have some great advocates in the California legislature, including Mike McGuire and Damon Connolly, but also others who write and advocate for climate and environmental justice, and they need our support. Because the usual suspects, fossil fuel interests and utilities continue to mount intense opposition. So I hope you guys can stay awake for this, because I went to 2-hour-long discussions of the legislative process, and I swear I fell asleep at both of them. So I'm going to try to make this short enough to keep you awake. But there are 2 houses in the legislature. The Assembly has 80 members who are elected every 2 years. And the Senate has 40 members who are elected every 4 years. And fortunately, this is a lot smaller than our national Congress. So we have a chance of getting our bills through. And our legislature meets every year in 2-year cycles. And the current cycle started January of 2023 and ends at the end of September. And so a bill can start in 2023 and finally get passed at the end of September of 2024, or it can die anywhere along the way. And in the second year, new bills can also be introduced. Bills can originate in either house, and they receive a permanent name based on the house they started in. So it'd be Assembly Bill 100 or Senate Bill 100 and so on. And both houses have to agree on the bill, and the process is basically the same in either house. A bill must go through at least 3 committees. The first one is the Rules Committee. And they kind of print up the bill and say, okay, now this bill has this topic and we're going to send it to environmental this committee. Or if it's a complicated bill, they can send it to 2 committees. And those committees are the policy committees. And that's where the most biggest amount of work happens. The final committee is appropriations. Obviously, pretty much everything has to get through appropriations. There are also subcommittees. For example, the subcommittee on the environmental budget, or the subcommittee on this or that. So some of the committees relevant to climate are natural resources, insurance, environmental safety, fire prevention, and health. Citizens can provide input at any of these points, including we can originate bills ourselves. If you want to find out more about the committees, you can Google them, and I did that. And I found this many committees related to the environment. I think there were more, but I stopped. And there are just pages and pages of committees. So I'm imagining that we at First Pres are tired of worrying about fires, bad air, and orange skies. We consider who else shares our concerns. And that could be pretty much anybody, but we would look at the Center for Biological Diversity or Climate Action Now or some other faith communities and so on. And then we have to figure out what legislator is also interested. And we go to that legislature and say, are you interested in carrying our bill? And if that legislature says yes, then that legislature will need co-sponsors. And one of our jobs as citizens is to help him find co-sponsors and so on. And we also have to look at who will oppose our bill. Some people are kind of pro-forest fires for some reason. And so we have to negotiate with any opposition to figure out the best way to minimize the language problem so our bill has a chance of passing. Because many a beloved bill has died in committee. One thing 350 Bay Area does is get volunteer bill trackers to talk to the committee members and their staff about the bill's progress and changing in wording to make it more palatable, and how we can get more support from who. And the committee work is the main thing. Pretty much anything that goes to the floor is going to pass. That's what I understand. So after a bill gets through the first house, it goes to the second house. And if it passes both houses on a floor vote, it goes to the governor, who can sign it, veto it, let it pass without signing it, or hand it back as a veto. And if it's vetoed, still a 2/3 vote in the legislature will get it passed. So some really great bills failed this year. One was called Make Polluters Pay. And the idea of this bill was to figure out just how many billions of dollars all the pollution and damage caused by the floods, the fires, and everything else cost, and apportion it out among all of these polluters. And you can look up the bills online, either by listing California AB 101 or like make polluters pay. I looked up this morning. It talks about who's opposing to make, it talks about the bill, and then it also has this other thing that says, if this horrible bill passes, we won't have any gas or oil, and jobs will be lost in California, and everything will be horrible. So it's pretty interesting to look that stuff up online. A bill proposing a constitutional right to clean air and water was quashed this year by interests that thought it would cause litigation against polluters. And in fact, it probably would cause such litigation. And incentives for rooftop solar also bit the dust due to the utilities. And divestment of fossil fuels from California state retirement systems also failed. And what we know is that if you have green investments, you make just as much money as you have fossil fuel investments in your portfolio. So that bill would not hurt investors, but the retirement boards from California were really opposed to changing their investors, and that bill died. And here's some of what survived from last year. A bill forcing fossil fuel companies to set wells back several thousand feet from schools. And that passed last year, and the oil interests were planning a ballot initiative on this to say, well, these setbacks are undoable and not a good idea. But they decided finally that they couldn't win. And as I said, I'm working with 350 Bay Area Action. It's a great group to work with because people who know more, way more than I do, can answer questions. And you get to know them, and whatever you want to find out, you can find out. I'm working on the fossil fuel team, but there's also the clean energy team, and the other team is transportation. But California Climate Action and the Climate Center also have a whole lot of people working on getting these bills written and getting people to sign petitions and organize around them. Also, some of the unions. And another big group is the Center for Biological Diversity. So I'm going to list a couple of bills that we're going to be asked to support in the next few weeks. But I was going to show you a list of bills that started this year and some of the bills that are still in play. So where is that list? Well, maybe I can't find the ones that started the year, but so I have 2 pages of ones that started this year. Then I have about 3 pages of the bill graveyard. And I have a tracking sheet. So if you decide to be a bill tracker, you have all of these little boxes you can fill out and say when you did X or Y or who you talked to. So I thought that was kind of neat. And this is just a page of people who are endorsing a bill. And the list goes on with hundreds of names. And this is one of the bills that I'm going to list for you. Let's see, what else do I have? So, so one thing is to say that our leaders really need to hear from us. As I said, Mike McGuire is the president pro tem of the Senate, and he's like the most important person in the legislature, and he represents us. And he is a big climate advocate. So people from 5 environmental groups met with him and with his staff about 2 bills to describe and support them. He hadn't really paid any attention to any of them because they hadn't crossed his appropriations desk, and he's, I think, head of appropriations in the Senate. So one is AB 3233, and that's one that people are working on right now, and we're going to be asked to try and get Mike McGuire to sign, and possibly other people. This bill reaffirms the rights of cities and counties to make legislation and regulations on oil and gas activities in their area. This includes banning them. This bill is necessary because Monterey County passed Measure Z in 2016. That bill would prohibit land use that supports new oil and gas wells, and it would also phase out industrial wastewater over the next 5 to 15 years. And this sounds like a really good thing, but it was challenged by oil interests who won their case in court. So, and they won their case in the Supreme Court of California. But so this bill would say that local entities can make regulations in their area about oil and gas bills. So it's really important. AB 3233, that's the bill I'm mentioning, has passed the Assembly and will be heard in the Senate. So it's far along in the process. It really has a chance. But the opponents have tons of money. But as I said, because we have Mike McGuire in our court, we may very well win this. Another super important bill is AB 1866. And that bill is called Plug the Idle Wells. And that one also has passed the Assembly. These wells release methane and other toxics at an alarming rate. And there are also some other bills related to what they call low producing wells or zero producing wells, except that they're not getting any oil and gas out, but they are still releasing toxics. So I've listed a couple more. SB 674 is the Refinery Air Pollution and Transparency Act. It requires refineries to notify us when they are emitting toxins in local communities. If they are emitting them, and if they exceed the agreed upon okay emissions rates, they are supposed to be taking remedial action. So there was originally a bill like this, but somehow it didn't get enforced. So this bill is to get this process of notification of toxic emissions and action taken against them done. And we have a big problem in building up the clean energy grid. And that's because we're using lots more electricity than we ever used. And in particular, AI uses a lot more energy. Electric vehicles use more energy. And more and more, we're going to be using, electric, wind, and solar. And so we need to have a grid that functions. So SB 1006 addresses this. For example, there are problems in areas which have AI and Bitcoin production. And SB 1006 directs PG&E or the government to research how to get the grid up to speed. So that's an important bill. And I'm going to talk about a big group of bills that are opposed by 350 Bay Area and other climate groups. And these are hydrogen energy bills and carbon capture bills. With hydrogen, the source of hydrogen is crucial since some of it comes from fossil fuels. And that just creates more fossil fuels. Even when hydrogen doesn't come from fossil fuels, it can be a problem because it uses so much water to make. And we really don't have much water either. Carbon capture proposes to take carbon emissions from fossil fuel production and transport it and bury it in the ground. An example is the proposed Montezuma Wetlands Project in Contra Costa County. Pressurized carbon dioxide gas would be transported through existing pipelines by barge and by new pipelines underwater to the eastern Suisun Marsh, which is the largest wetlands in the western United States. There it would be injected with no clear guarantee that it would stay underground if it got there. But these pipelines leak. Also, water can leak into the pipelines. These are kind of old pipelines. If water leaks into a pipeline with carbon dioxide, then you create carbonic acid. And it's a big problem, and it really would not be good to have pipelines right near a wetlands leaking carbon dioxide and carbonic acid. And okay, so I have a little handout on a campaign that's happening in eastern Contra Costa County. I mean, in Solano County, because Solano County is the county where this carbon capture project would be terminating. And they are organizing a campaign against it. So we may be asked to support them in some way. And also we need to learn about carbon capture. And what else do I have here? Oh, okay. And finally, I want to mention Prop 4, which is the climate bond. And that's going to be on the November ballot. And the way it got on the ballot is that the legislature had to pass a bill saying that we should put this bond on the ballot, and the governor had to sign it. And it's called the Safe Drinking Water, Wildfire Prevention, Drought Preparedness, and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024. And we should all support it. It would allow the state to borrow $10 billion. 40% of the money goes to projects which aid disadvantaged communities. And I have a list of all the things that are listed that, let's see, Prop 4 is going to support. And it's got safe drinking water, drought flood, water resilience. And that goes on for a few pages. Wildfire and forest resilience. Sea level rise and coastal resilience, extreme heat mitigation, and protect biodiversity and accelerate nature-based climate solutions. So let's see if I have anything else. And climate smart, sustainable, and resilient farms, ranches, and working lands. Recreation and outdoor access and clean air. So there's a lot in this bond to like. I'm not sure that it says anything about getting rid of the fossil fuel industry, which would be a really good thing to put on the ballot. So, does anyone have questions?
That sounds like a bargain for $10 billion.
Right. Yeah.
Does the prop board require 2/3 or?
What?
Does it require 2/3 vote or it's just a majority vote?
I think it's a majority, possibly 55%. That's a good question, which I don't have the answer to. Yeah.
And are you aware of any studies or any evidence about the effectiveness of various ways of contacting people who make decisions?
Well, we think that this process of bill tracking, bill writing and bill tracking is quite effective. There are a number of legislators who are really interested in environmental justice and all of these climate issues. And I could list, there are 5 or 6 whose names come up repeatedly. And then there are a few that we know are like big oil
But
supporters.
is it any better to write handwritten, to telephone, to email? What is the effective way to reach the legislature?
I think that phone calls can be really good. It depends on the stage that things are at. Like if something is going to be heard in committee this week, phone calls are the best thing. But other times you can email or write. I don't think it matters too much. I haven't heard that it does. What?
They track written comments and
Right.
sometimes respond to those.
Yeah, the other thing is, if it's a big bill that a lot of people want to support, people can go to meetings. Like I mentioned, this meeting with Senator McGuire's staff, people from 5 groups got together and met with him, with his staff. And people do that with other bills all the time. And that requires going to Sacramento these days to do that.
I looked into this 10 or 15 years ago. And the information that I gathered in various ways was that emails are kind of a waste of time. That telephone calls are better, but if you want to influence somebody, you got to see them face to face. Now, that's not scientific information, you know, that's not absolute truth, but I wonder what people say these days about it.
What I hear is face, I said, meeting with the staff members. That's really important. Phone calls. People pretty much do emails these days. I mean, very few people write letters, but there are petitions and there are also emails. So a lot of the things, if you sign up to get my reports, then you can often sign a petition, but if you can also email, that's the best thing. And if we do stuff as a church, like from Church and Society or possibly Session, that is stronger than, you know, individuals, or can be in addition.
I've tried emailing different people, different legislators, and they will say, what is your zip code? And I'll put in my zip code and they say, oh, you're not in his or her district. So that has been frustrating.
So when something is in a committee, it may, and you're not in his district, that may be the case. Once it gets to appropriations, then it kind of belongs to everybody in the state. And then emailing whoever is in appropriations, that, that can be done. For instance, anyone in the state can email Mike McGuire about any bill because he's in charge of the Senate.
I'd like to point out that Mike McGuire, among other legislators and politicians, he makes a big practice of coming to Marin County and meeting with a number of groups about environmental issues. He's spot on. He is so great. He really tries to make his presence visible with environment.
Yeah,
Yeah, just online looking at Prop 4, November 2024, there are 4 separate entries with lots of information and sources that you might be able to contact.
The Prop 4 is it's a state proposition, Prop 4, the one that listed all our different issues. It's a state.
yeah, and that was just kind of like how many millions, or I can't really figure out how many thousands or millions of dollars are going to go to each topic, like under safe drinking water. It's got a whole bunch of different things. Water conservation, water storage, water data management.
Totally educational, that proposition.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important proposition. So are you guys inspired to sign up to get these requests to sign petitions or write emails? I hope you are. But if you're not, I'm going to do this again sometime.
So I already do that. I want to support you, definitely.
Oh, great.
$350. Move on and Elders for Climate and how many others are there?
Oh, there's bottomless. There are like hundreds. Like, let's see. I'm going to go back to my pictures. But so I showed you a page and a half of pictures. But then, okay, so here are all the groups that support, I think it's AB 1866. So page 1, page 2, not done yet. Page 3.
Those are all organizations.
Yeah, I'll just read some of them at random. Oil and Gas Action Network, Pacific Environment, Peninsula Interfaith Climate Action, Physicians for Social Responsibility from Los Angeles, Filipino Workers Center of Southern California, Redeemer Community Project, etc.
Is Bert Perez on that?
Well, we did, Church and Society did support a bill that unfortunately died in committee, and was pulled by the author, but maybe will reappear. And that was the Make Polluters Pay bill.
Church of Society.
We supported that one. And that was a few months ago. But,
Well, is 350 Marin still active?
they are,
Residents, now 350 Bay Area?
Well, 350 Marin is part of 350 Bay Area.
Yes,
Jody Timms does come to some of the legislative meetings. They are mainly, the campaigns they have are mainly stopping a gas station at Costco in Novato. And they also train climate interns. And they have interns during the winter and during the summer, and they do research. But I can't quite remember everything they do, but I get their emails. And you can get them too by signing up.
yeah, before COVID, 350 Marin was meeting all the time. And now I don't hear much about it.
I think I get stuff from them about once a month. I used to get a lot more from the Climate Action Center or Climate Action California and the Climate Center. And for some reason, they haven't been providing as much in the way of seminars and webinars and things to sign petitions for and stuff like that. And I'm not sure why. Yeah.
I'd really like to support you. And I was just wondering if there's any way that's already that's already organized to add a name if you're looking for petition signatures. Or write a short email, or make a short phone call, if there's anything like on a regular basis that the church already has for communication, that you can plug in something, oh, this is gonna be up, for review, let's make a phone call.
Yeah, well, I put down 2 sign-up sheets over there. And anyone who signs will get information from me or somebody else in church and society. And I don't want to send emails to people who don't want them. And I may not put it in the Friday email for that reason. I'm hoping to find people who really want to sign up and are interested. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to do anything on any particular occasion, but just people who want to know.
You deserve support, I champion you. Thank you.
Great, thank you.